During quarantine, my 4-year-old and I played a lot of hide and seek. Well, hide and seek with a few extra rules. 1. I'm the only one that hides, he doesn't want to. 2. I have to call out, "Yoo-hoo," every few minutes, otherwise he'd never find me. And 3. When he gets close, I pop a hand or foot out of my hiding spot. And he shrieks, "I see your feet, ah ha 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 ha." 4-year-olds are really stupid, okay? And I didn't exactly have the money to buy him a ton of toys. We just moved into this house a few weeks ago. The rent took up nearly my entire paycheck. I got all the furniture from Free Cycle, we ate beans and rice often, and I was still driving around a 20-year-old car. "Hide again," Benjamin said, tugging my hand. "Hide again. But it's almost bedtime. Please." "Okay. But only one game, okay? Go count in the kitchen." He ran around the corner as fast as he could. 1. 2. I ran through the living room, and then I saw it, the hall closet. Perfect. I opened the door and ducked inside. It was a tight fit, all those scratchy, furry old coats pressing against me, but it was worth it. Because the better the hiding spot, the more time I got to myself. I pulled out my phone and started browsing Reddit. Soon his muffled footsteps sounded, around the dining room. I waited a minute. When he didn't seem to be coming my way, I cracked the door. "Yoo-hoo!" I called out. Footsteps grew louder. I heard his muffled giggles as he walked towards me, and then he started going up the stairs. What an idiot. I cracked the door open a little further, just in time to see his little feet disappear from the landing. Then I shrugged. More time for me. I sat back down in the closet and pulled out the phone. "Mommy," I heard him giggle from upstairs. "Mommy, where are you?" I smiled. I wonder if a mom invented hide and seek. It's quite brilliant. You get a few precious minutes away from your child, and they're not even supposed to make much noise. But you're entertaining them at the same time. Absolutely BR. Yoo-hoo. I stopped. Every muscle in my body froze. But I heard it, clear as day. A soft, clear voice calling from upstairs. But Benjamin and I were home alone. "Oh God, someone's in the house!" And Benjamin. I burst out of the closet. "Benjamin? Where are you?" I heard Benjamin's footsteps running above me. His giggles, trailing down to me. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. "Benjamin!" I finally screamed. More giggles. And then Benjamin's voice. "I see your feet." No. I catapulted up the steps, screaming for him. I burst into his bedroom, but he wasn't there. Just his empty rocket bed, comforter rumpled, embroidered stars staring back at me. I ran back into the hallway, spinning around. "Benjamin?" But I didn't hear any footsteps. Any giggling. The house was dead silent now, and I could hear a pin drop. I ran into the guest bedroom. It was empty. I ran over to the closet. Threw it open, looked up and down. Nothing. Stumbling back out in the hallway, I crossed back towards my bedroom. The only bedroom left. I ran inside and flicked on the light. Empty. The pile of dirty laundry on the chair, untouched. The wardrobe, hanging open, my clothes inside. The pillows piled up on each other in a heap. Heart dropping, I ran around the other side of the bed. Also empty. I crouched to look under the bed. Empty. Mommy? Mommy? Relief flooded me as I heard that voice. The door to the bathroom opened a crack, and one blue eye peered out at me, wide with fear. I ran over and grabbed him. Hugged him. And then I hoisted him up and started out of the bathroom. His eyes were still wide with fear. And they weren't focused on my face, but the spot just over my shoulder. I whipped around. It took me a moment to see it, but then I did. I stared at the wardrobe, frozen, my heart pounding in my ears. In the shadows, poking out from underneath the hems of my dresses and coats, were 2 feet. In moments like this, the brain doesn't really think. It's too slow. Instinct reigns. The smartest thing would have been to lock ourselves in the bathroom and climb out the window. But instead, I just ran for the hallway. As fast as I could. As I ran down the stairs, I heard the weighted footsteps, slow and methodical, resonating through the house. I could still hear them pounding into my brain as I ran to the neighbor and screamed for help. The police came. They searched the house. They didn't find anything, no signs of forced entry, either. So they promised me they'd patrol my street for the next few days, but that was really all they could do. I decided to stay at a friend's house for a few weeks, until I felt safe again. But every time I closed my eyes, I could see them. Those 2 feet, that looked so off, somehow. Swollen, as if waterlogged. A bit too grayish in tone to belong to any normal person. Toenails blackened and split. And I think back to that wardrobe. How I'd gotten it for free. How the owner told me his mother had just died, and he was just trying to get rid of all her stuff as quickly as possible. And I wondered. How, exactly, did she die? According to my mom, the way the story of Skilson's introduction to the family goes is quite mundane. My mom loves dressing up, decorating, and generally celebrating every holiday out there, while my dad is more of a holidays are just a day off work kind of guy, but when they got their first nicer apartment together, around Halloween, he bought her the toy as a joke because it was so incredibly silly looking. Since they were being patient about starting a family, they used to pick on each other by occasionally saying things like, "You forgot to feed Skilson again today, didn't you?" I can see his ribs. You know, dumb parent jokes like that. I mean, I guess it's cute. Anyway, when I was born, no, they thankfully did not name me Skin Daughter. They put it in my room and used to tell me that Skilson was my big brother and he was going to keep me safe from the ghouls and goblins of the world. We even had a bedtime song about, "Anyway it doesn't matter." Skilson is mostly fabric and stuffing but with some rigid pieces underneath for the bones. He has an orange and black wide brim hat, with matching striped vest and pants. He has black shoes and a bow tie of the same color. I can't express to you how silly this toy was. When I was very young, I used to revere Skilson, I guess like I would an older brother. I never played with him directly, he was only ever involved in make-believe in the role of advisor or wise man to the other toys. It's not that my parents told me not to play with him, or that he was fragile or anything, I just thought of him as different. I can still feel the way the hair rose on the back of my neck the first time I heard him speak to me. I was 8 years old. It was late at night, and I was up a little later than I should have been. My parents had told me to be in bed by 9 but they fell asleep before that, so I stayed up to watch some more TV in my room. It took me a moment to realize the sound had come from my side and not from the speakers in front of me. Go wake your parents up, or something bad will happen soon. I froze, and looked to where the sound was coming from. The only thing on my dresser in that direction was Skilson. Of course, I didn't assume it was him right away. "Hello," I said out loud, clutching my covers tightly. I let go long enough to turn the volume down on the TV and saw Skilson's mouth move this time. His voice was calm, deliberate, and forceful. "Go wake your parents up, or something bad will happen soon." Being 8, I ran to my parents' room crying. They asked what was going on and I told them I had a nightmare. Even at that age I knew what I had seen wasn't normal, and I was scared to say it out loud and make it real. I got it from my dad. He has always been one to keep his struggles to himself. I slept in my parents' bed that night. The next time it happened was 2 months later. Similarly to last time, I was staying up later than my parents, but unlike last time I had a cousin spending the night this time. Simon and I were up late, maybe 10, playing video games, after a long day at the beach. Simon went to the bathroom and while he was gone, Skilson spoke to me again. "Go wake your parents up, or something bad will happen soon." This time, I didn't freeze, or cry. I knew Simon would be back in a minute, and I was more confused than scared this time. "What's going to happen?" I asked. Skilson turned his head towards me and only repeated himself verbatim. "Go wake your parents up, or something bad will happen soon." His head snapped back into place as I heard the door swing open, and Simon re-entered. "Who were you talking to?" Simon asked me. "Did you hear that?" I asked him in surprise. If he had heard Skilson talk, maybe I wasn't going crazy after all. "I only heard you mumbling, but I didn't hear what you said. Were you yelling at the game?" He hadn't seemed to have heard anything specific after all. Skilson didn't move or speak for another 6 months. On my 9th birthday, me and all of my friends were going to go to an amusement park. The day before, I was so excited I thought I was going to be sick. I was reading all about the rides, attractions, and food at the park in bed when Skilson spoke again. "Go wake your parents up, or something bad will happen now." He said the last word so sharply that it shook the windows. I sat up half terrified and half in disbelief. I opened my mouth to speak but before I could take a breath, he screamed. "Now! Now! Now!" The shockwave from his voice scattered the dust in my room and almost knocked me off my bed. I took off running. I burst through my mom and dad's door and screamed, "I need help," before I blacked out. I woke up 38 days later in the hospital. They said the tumor was the size of a golf ball and growing. If they hadn't caught it when they did, it would have started putting pressure on my brain and I could have started having hallucinations or even permanent brain damage. The operation was a success and I've never had any serious complications, aside from the 4-inch section of my scalp where the hair won't grow. The doctors insisted my blacking out was unrelated and just a random panic attack. They insisted there wouldn't have been any symptoms at all, my brain was normal and there was no excess pressure anywhere yet. They said normally, you can't really tell until it's already causing problems. They said we were so very lucky. They all patted themselves on the back for going through with the CT scans, just in case. Skilson never spoke to me again. He never moved. He never gave any indication he was anything more than a stuffed toy with a silly backstory. I still keep him around though. He moved with me when I went to college, much to the confusion and amusement of my parents, who never got the full story from me, and he lives with me in my first home, now. I'll introduce him to my kids as their guardian uncle, and he'll have a placement in their bedrooms when they sleep at night. Because even though it would be really easy for me to dismiss the encounters as hallucinations my doctors were wrong about, there was a reason they took those scans. My dad wouldn't let it go, and forced them to get the scans. They argued with him to no end, but he wouldn't back down or explain why he was convinced they needed to be done. When my mom asked him afterwards how could he have known? How could he have seen what the doctors couldn't, when he was just some middle manager, who had absolutely nothing in the way of medical knowledge? He swore her to secrecy. Mom and I drink wine together, though, and to this day has never mentioned it to her or anyone else again. He said, "I know this might sound crazy, but as we were rushing out the door to the hospital, I heard someone shout, 'Make them check her brain,' from her bedroom." That's what they told me I was. When I came out I wasn't crying or breathing or reaching for my mother. There were no signs of life present. All the doctors and nurses tried desperately to get me back, to get a single breath from me. This all went down while my mother sat in her bed pleading to get a look at my face, my gaunt and purple face. After nearly 10 minutes of the doctor's efforts and my mother begging them not to give up on me, I inhaled my first breath of fresh air. They had all but given up at that point, and just as the white flag was supposed to wave, there I was, a brand new child entering the world. My mother always told me as I grew up what a miracle I ended up being. She had never been the religious type before my birth, but she gained faith in that delivery room. A miracle. Every morning and every kiss goodnight she would remind me, and when she would pull away from that kiss, I would see her, my still fairly young mother, and how she would look in the moments of her passing. It's hard for me to really explain it because I've never known anything other than it. I don't know how regular people see the world around them. All I know is that it's different from me. It was scary for a long time. Every time a grown-up would tell me that monsters aren't real, I would want to tell them that they were the monster that haunted me. You can get used to anything over time, and some days I operate under a sense of normalcy, but there's always some new horrific tragedy waiting right around the corner. One that hadn't even happened yet. A fated roll of the dice upon some unsuspecting victim. I became acutely aware of my little miracle pretty shortly into my life, as soon as I was able to understand that world around me. Conscious thought forming the tapestry of my life. My mother had a sister, and whenever she would come around, would see rivers of green foam spilling from her mouth. I hated when she would try to lean in for a kiss. Her skin was a similar color to the sick pouring from between her lips. The whites of her eyes a disgusting yellow. After a few years, my mother's sister ended up passing away. I had overheard some of the adults speaking with each other about her overdose. About the way her stomach lining broke down and the disgusting color her skin had changed. I never saw her, of course, but it was hard to deny that what I had been seeing ended up as her fate. My upbringing was normal. Other than that, I tried to keep the way I saw people to myself, as it became apparent that no one else saw them that way. When I was little, I would try to point out how scary people looked to my mom describing their features. She would always retort that my imagination was too wild, that I should think of nice things. Nothing would have made me happier. I learned a few things about my special set of rules regarding my vision. Though I could see the visual effects of someone's death, I couldn't see them at their time of death. Children would still look like children to me even if they were going to die as full-grown adults. So as I went to school and sat with all the other kids in my class, try my best not to fall ill as I looked around the room. The kid who sat in front of me, every day he was wearing different clothing but the fabric would be stained with 3 dark red spots. The shirts would be torn as if something ejected out of his back. He would turn around to face me sometimes, ask me for a pencil or try to start a small conversation. There would be one more dark dot adorning his face right in the middle of his forehead. When I grew up I looked up his name and found his obituary from our hometown. He must have fallen in with the wrong people. 3 bullets to the stomach and 1 to the head, that's how he went out. So many children in the classroom looked like they would fall to terrible fates. The weirdest things were when someone lost a limb. I would see objects start floating in the air in front of them. They still had their arms but I couldn't see them, as they died without them. Like when I interviewed for my first job and I held out my hand to offer a shake, I felt fingers wrap around mine despite not seeing it. There was a massive disconnect between my head and my mind. I had to play pretend a lot, pretend to walk around like a normal human being with nothing special going on. Just a face in the crowd. I've thought about trying to monetize my gift, maybe some sort of fortune-telling business where people could discover how they died. I soon learned that wouldn't work though, the first time someone took my ramblings seriously. I noticed their body changed. Previously they had large gashes in their chest that ran almost to the bone. When warning them about a possible animal attack they said they were planning to go on a hiking trip but would avoid it thanks to me. The gashes on their chest vanished like a wisp of vapors and then a wound opened in their throat. I could see small scrapes all over their body and their head became dented. I recognized this as damage similar to a car crash. Sure, I might have given him more time on this earth but there's no telling if it would always turn out that way. Maybe I could warn someone about an event and in their attempts to avoid it they ended up dying earlier. I just couldn't risk it. Ultimately, everybody dies. There's no telling when my visions even take place. I might know how but the when is uncertain. Of course, not everyone on Earth is going to meet some grisly and gore-filled end. Some people die on the inside, something pops in their head and they'll just drop to the floor. Some people die peacefully in their sleep. Those are the type of people I found myself getting close to and making friends with. Surrounding myself with them was the only real way to find any normal in my life. Then eventually, my mother passed on. I was upset to hear that it happened but I wasn't exactly surprised. Like I mentioned, not everyone had grisly wounds, but my mother's internal damage made its way out of her body. I always saw her with those thin trails of red tears running down her cheek. Ironic that she found religion after my birth in that kind of way. I've been around a while, and I've mostly gotten used to the horrors constantly on display around me. I know what you're wondering though. Does anything ever unsettle me? What are the most messed up and alarming causes of death I've seen? Do I ever intervene knowing I might change a thing for the worse if I see something bad enough? Yes, I still get unsettled. As much as I try to shut it out, I am nothing more than a human. I still get chills if I see something particularly gnarly. Like when a local barista turned around to take my order, I watched his lips move, trying to ignore that half of his head was missing. Like someone had cut him cleanly on a slant, leaving one-eye portions of his nose. I could see his brain resting in the other visible half. All gray and shifting as he spoke, it was difficult to drink the coffee I had ordered. I saw a set of twins once. Their mother said they do everything together. So I guess I shouldn't have been shocked they died in the same way. Judging by their mother's skin complexion, they weren't supposed to have charred and chipping skin. Dark leather that had been sitting sun-washed in some random alley for years. I could almost see the smoke rising off their bodies and the bright embers resting just under their skin. No, I normally try not to intervene. Even if things look terrible, there is no guarantee that I don't make things worse. The only time I'll try to step in is if the wounds I notice appear to be self-inflicted. If someone had deep grooves lining their wrist or red imprints around their neck, I try to be a little nicer to them. I compliment them or ask if they want to hang out sometimes. It doesn't always work, some people carry other curses. Sometimes it does though, and while the wounds that replace them aren't always prettier, I can pretend I made them just a little happier that day. All my life, I've known annihilated limbs and severed heads. Every day I leave the house I enter into some grotesque Halloween horror show. Some wounds trouble me though. Sometimes people are just different. The way their bodies are twisted and mangled looks like boulders had been dropped on them. I see skin stretched and torn by with most of their abdomen missing. The deaths where I can't for the life of me figure out what is going to happen to the person always get on my nerves. Like a woman passing by that had several lumps poking out all over her skin like needles were trying to get out. Some people walking around look normal until they set their eyes on me. They glow a deep amber and their skin goes pale, and suddenly I feel like I'm the one being observed. It's like they're visually whispering to me, letting me know that they know. It's no use worrying too much about it though. Who am I to say what bizarre forces lurk in the shadows of this world? After all, it's likely I am one of those forces. You have one more question though, don't you? If I can see the way everyone will die, then what do I see when I look in the mirror? I hate to disappoint you, it's far more anticlimactic than you're likely expecting. I've looked in many mirrors, but to be honest, I'm not sure what I look like. Every time I see a reflection, I don't see myself. There's nothing there. As if I was plucked right out of this reality when I die, or many I was never really living. I've always had one step in the grave and my eyes on the future.